Oh, perfect. So we're on. I see the red dot.
Excellent.
Welcome. Good morning to you, Robyn. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I am fantastic. The weekend is almost upon us with all that that entails, and I can't wait. I honestly can't wait. We've got to look where I am at the moment. How about you?
I weekends are good because it takes a little bit of the pressure off, but with
Mm,
kids, it also means all kinds of running back and forth. So every time I head into a weekend, I spend half my time thinking about my schedule.
yeah, yeah. No, it's a different.
He just
Oh,
arrived.
you've got the tea. I love
I got the
this.
tea. Yep. Sorry. Careful, careful.
Oh, that's excellent. No,
Okay.
I know I'm also having a tea, which I know is not on brand with coffee with Kofi, but maybe we should say a hot beverage with Kofi. So
I
cheers to
know.
that.
Well, I before I moved to the UK, I legitimately did not drink very much tea. And since I've moved here, I can't get enough of the stuff. So
Yeah,
tea finally makes sense to me.
yeah. I mean, it's an occupational hazard of being in the UK. It is if you go anywhere, you're offered a tea. It just comes with a package. So yeah, welcome to it.
Thank you.
Excellent. But no, I feel you on the running around with the children thing. Like when I have mine with me, I swap diary of a CEO for diary of an Uber driver. Whatever they need is where I'm going to be. And so I hear you on that. But yeah, hopefully you have a good one. But before I start, I know we've got some time, but not all the time. I'd love to do a short introduction just to situate us in the context of the marvelousness that is you, and always invite you to say that is incorrect because yeah, then
Standing
I could,
by, ready to go.
yeah, then I can have a talk to my research people and say, we didn't hit the mark. So thank you first of all, and welcome once again. And anyone listening, welcome to Coffee with Kofi, which, if you don't know, is the podcast where we explore the journeys of inspiring leaders and change makers, uncovering the lessons that help us all find greater fulfillment in our work and our lives. Today, I'm joined by Robyn Baker, a distinguished trial litigator, investigator, and partner at Munger, Tolles, and Olson LLP. Robyn's career spans nearly a decade as a federal prosecutor in LA, where she's tried complex criminal cases, argued appeals before the Ninth Circuit, and led investigations into cybercrime, financial fraud, and organized crime. Today, Robyn continues to champion justice and has also taught trial advocacy at Harvard Law School, no less, and volunteered with a number of organizations that empower both women and young debaters. So in this conversation, I can't wait. I honestly can't wait, Robyn. We'll explore your remarkable career, the lessons you've learned from the courtroom to the classroom, and insights on finding purpose and fulfillment in what can be really demanding careers. So grab your coffee, or as we have our tea,
Exactly.
and let's get started. So thank you, Robyn, once again. How did that sit with you? True or false?
It was definitely true. There is always something a little disorienting about hearing yourself kind of laid out in the
Mm,
third person, and Robyn has
mm,
done these many things, because it always feels a little surreal. Your own life, you're living in real time. So you
yeah.
don't spend a lot of time looking back saying, well, what does it all actually add up to? But
Mm.
I will say that was all completely true.
Oh, fantastic. So someone is keeping their job. Let's say that. Someone's
No
keeping their job.
researchers were fired.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Well, before we get started into the sort of the meat of your career and the amazing things that you've done with it, I always like to start with the Genesis story. A good old biblical reference never goes amiss with me. And so with the Genesis of Robyn, I'd love to know where, to whom, and when you were sort of born, really, just to give us some context to build on, really.
Sure. I call them origin stories, and my own superhero origin story. I'm American, in case you can't tell from my delightful North American accent. And I was actually born in the nation's capital.
Mm.
My parents did not stay married for very long. They basically came together for the purposes of me. And I grew up with my mom in California, and I consider myself a native Californian. I've lived in other places, but somehow the roads have always led me back to the West Coast.
Well, that's wonderful. Now, did you know that California is like my second spiritual home?
I did not know that, but I'm glad to hear it. And I take that as a excellent sign. California is, it's a powerful place. It
Mm,
certainly, it's a real place. So it certainly has a lot of the sort of struggles and issues that a lot of places have right now.
yeah,
But there is something particularly magical about the actual place itself, the mountains and the ocean and things growing, and
mm,
it's just it's got its own kind of special energy.
yeah.
Though I'm currently, as we record this, in Scotland, which, to my
Very good.
surprise, I
Very good.
found turned out to be my other spiritual home as well, which I did not see that coming.
No, I love that for the fact that we can move ourselves geographically, but yet find a piece of ourselves wherever we tend to land. And I love that for you. And I tell a short aside to California. Went to San Francisco, didn't really think too much of it. I didn't go in the heydays where it was flourishing before the tech bubble burst. But then drove north to Marin County and also to a beautiful place, Mount Shasta. I don't know if you've ever been.
Yes, I know Mount Shasta. It's quite
Yeah.
lovely up there.
Oh, and
Yeah.
it was for a bike race, and I kid you not, like when I got out of the truck, as I know it is called over there, and I stepped on the ground, I honestly felt this energy just pulsing up through the ground, through my feet and legs and up in my body. And it was, I thought maybe because I've been driving for hours, it was that. But then I spoke to someone about it and said, "Oh, we're on an energy line of some sort." And yeah, if you're awake to it, you will feel the sort of the power of the place. And that I did. It was just beautiful spiritually, but also visually as well, you know?
No, it's actually pretty spectacular. And one of the things that I think makes California special is that, people talk about energy lines, but I mean, that's literally true. And a place like Mount Shasta is right on the fault line or very close to it. And
Mm,
those are dormant volcanoes. So there is literally the power of the earth and the creation of the continent all happened right there. And I go hiking with my son when in the Sierra Nevadas, and it's the
mhm,
same thing. You just suddenly you feel connected to something so old and
yeah,
literally deep. I
yeah,
mean, these are mountains that came up from the ocean floor millions of years ago. And it's hard not to just kind of sense that when you're there,
um,
if you're just looking around and kind of open to it. So your experience resonates with me.
yeah. No, that's I'm glad it wasn't me because I had questioned myself at first, thinking this is something else. But now you're in Scotland, so tell me about the transition to Scotland. Like what brought you here at the moment?
So at the moment, I'm in Edinburgh, and I came here in pursuit of knowledge. I did not end up with the knowledge that I set out to pursue, but
Mhm.
I do feel like I have learned many things since I came here. And right now, I'm in the southern end of Edinburgh. I've got a view of the Pentlands right outside my window, and just a very different atmosphere than what we have in California. Everything here has a kind of openness to it, in a way that's different than life in the States, but it's also, what folks here call mountains is what we call hills. And so it's also just a different kind of scale. But I mean, it's so green, which is
Mm,
incredible. California is not a green state.
no,
That's why they call it the Golden State and not the Emerald State. And
yeah.
so being in a place where literally just out of my window, there's a park right behind me. And so everywhere I look is just green. And in the spring, everything's covered with the purple of heather and there's water everywhere. It's just been extraordinary.
No, I'm sold. I'm sold. It's criminally, I've never been to Edinburgh, but it's definitely on my list of things. And just talking about the sort of cultural context, just a little bit there. What do you notice most about the people of Edinburgh versus the people of California? What have you picked up so far?
I mean, they're so different that they're almost impossible to compare.
Mm,
Um, it's such a different place. It's considerably smaller
mm,
than I mean, I'm from Los Angeles, which is one of the biggest cities in the world. When you sort of factor in all of the different pieces that make up what we call the city of Los Angeles, it's larger than most of the states in the United States. And so I'm from a place that has millions of people and all kinds of people from everywhere in the world, and they're all moving at sort of rapid speed. It's not New York. It's not, people aren't awake at 3 a.m. getting falafel and doing business deals, but there is a kind of perpetual motion to a large city. And that isn't the case with a smaller city like this. I mean, Edinburgh only has 500,000 people, maybe 600,000. And the whole city fits in probably one piece of Los Angeles. I could walk from here to the other side of Edinburgh. And the people are very warm. I have actually found living here to be a very pleasant experience. I wouldn't say that they're very quick to do things like invite you over for a cup of tea or a meal, but they're very welcoming when you talk to them, which has been a very pleasant experience. And it's a very different demographic here, but it's been so fascinating being in a place that has the kind of history that you get when you're here, where there have been people living here for this long who are actually still the people living here. In the United States, there's a lot of discontinuity. And, it's a short history, but it's a short history of people coming in and taking land from other people, and then those other people actually just not being present anymore. And it's so different to be in a place where the indigenous population are the Scottish people. It's just a totally different experience. And so I feel really privileged actually to have been able to explore some of that with the folks here. I play music in a Scots music group where we play sort of traditional music, and I was welcomed into that space, and storytelling traditions and things like that. It's just been such a different experience being here and being in a place where people have that kind of active engagement with their history. I think it might even be different if I've never lived in England, but I think it would definitely be different if I was in London or even if I was in England compared to sort of the specific experience in a place like Scotland, or, I imagine it would be maybe similar if I was in Ireland, but that or Wales, like that kind of, there's a history here that is separate from the history of the country or the United Kingdom that they're all a part of. And that's been just a really fascinating adventure.
No, it does sound like it. And for me, one of the reasons why I love doing these conversations is I'm innately curious about cultures and the differences, but also some of the similarities that we find, the ways that people sort of bond and spend time on various pastimes, let alone, family and that sort of thing. And so hearing you play that through is like, oh, yeah, I can imagine that. And you're right. And having been to Ireland, they have their folk songs and the things that they've been singing for years and years, sometimes from a place of rebellion, sometimes from a place of appreciation of their natural landscape. But all of these tales, when you're not from that and you can just be invited in just to witness it, is a remarkable thing. So thank you so much.
It has definitely been a surprise highlight, but one that I very much enjoy and has, I think, really informed sort of my perspective on my own history and certainly on American history. I feel like I like to tell them I'm very familiar with what happened with the folks who left and went across to the US, and there's so many of them. Scotland had a huge influence on North American history because there were so many immigrants, but it's very different to see what it is that they were leaving. It gives you sort of a more full picture.
I love that. Wow. Now, this wasn't the plan to go into that, but
I mean, because I can talk about Scotland. I got more on Scotland, but we can move on.
Yeah, but no, it was a great segue into where you are now, and I think now we know you're in Edinburgh at the moment, and you're enjoying the experience, enriching experience that it is. But I'd love to pull us back to your career, and for me, it seems as though you've built this amazing career that's at the intersection of law, cybersecurity, and financial crime. And I just wondered, being nosy, what first drew you to this path,
I wish I had a deeper answer, but the honest answer is that I have watched a lot of television in my life. And when you watch a lot of TV, inevitably you end up watching a lot of TV that has to do with crime and criminal justice and catching bad guys and defending bad guys. And I feel like in a lot of ways that has ended up really shaping a lot of the choices that I've made. I actually went to film school before I went to law school. And I went to film school wanting to make movies, to tell these kinds of stories. And somewhere along that road, I realized that I didn't want to make the movies. I sort of wanted to live the movies. And that was part of what pushed me to go to law school. And when I got to law school, it seemed like a complete no-brainer that I would go into criminal law. I expected to be a defense lawyer out of the gate. I had not expected to be a prosecutor. But that was an opportunity that came up. And then when I pursued that, I felt like I did it for a summer. I interned at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I felt like it just opened I'd never even heard of the U.S. Attorney's Office before then, because again, everything I knew from television. And it just opened my eyes to just all this whole other world of criminal law and crime and all of these things that were going on that were just so fascinating that I couldn't look away. And I just knew I had to make that part of what I did. And then once I got the job as a prosecutor, then it was about sort of following opportunity. Organized crime was where I first landed. And that was because it was very clear that would be a great place to do interesting cases. And, the kinds of things like you see on TV, gang cases and international money laundering with undercover agents and all of that kind of cool stuff. And then at one point I was a supervisor. And while I was a supervisor, the head of the cybercrime unit came up to me and said, "How would you like to come join cyber when you stop supervising?" And I have a couple of principles that I try to operate on, and one of them is you never say no to an opportunity to learn something new.
Okay, brilliant.
And so that led me there. And then since then, it's really just been about, these were things that I found really resonated and were interesting enough to me that I could put the energy in. It felt natural to put the energy in to pursue them in my career, because I think it's very easy to say to somebody, follow your passion. Who knows what that is, right? But it's a lot easier to say, do things that interest you. So even if you have a job as a mechanical engineer, because that is a nice steady paycheck, design soccer balls if that's what you're really interested in. If you are a dental hygienist, because that's just the path that you took, live in a place that you find interesting. Like, pursue things that interest you, because that's what makes the time that you spend during the day feel like it's worthwhile. So for me, that led me to that particular path.
That's so helpful. The simplicity of that, and how that helps so many of us who at periods in time are like, is this it? Am I where I'm supposed to be? Could I do something else? Is so perfect, because really it is allowing, rather than rowing a boat, I've got to get here, it's putting up the sail and letting the winds of interest direct you to the destination. You might not see it, but by being in the places, doing the pursuits with the people that you love and like and enjoy, you're going to get somewhere, which sounds a bit like your journey in a metaphorical sense.
I spend a lot of time talking to law students and junior lawyers, and the advice that I always give them is that they need to just take enough time to think about what they actually want, what matters to them. And it doesn't have to be professional. It can be professional, but it could be, and it can be as simple as, I want a lot of money and I want to wear nice suits. That is completely fine, as long as that's what you actually want. Just be really, really clear. Or I want to be able to raise my kids and spend lots and lots of time with them. Or I want to be arguing cases in front of the US Supreme Court, whatever it is. And then, you think of it like a compass. You set that as true north. And every choice that you make needs to be heading you towards north. And if it's not, then don't make it. But the other part of it that I always tell them is that, just like in real life, if you're navigating with a compass, you have to reorient from time to time. You can't just take your bearings once and be like, I'm great, I'll never get lost again. And it's the same thing in life. You have to stop periodically and say, wait, where's north? And north might not be where you think it is. It could be that you made a choice to make a lot of money and wear nice suits, and your whole life you're like, that's actually awesome. Also, I'd like a nice car and a good watch. And you just keep making choices that lead you there. But it could just as easily be a realization that a choice that you made 5 years ago just doesn't make sense for you anymore. And you have to be willing to ask yourself that. But once you are, then it helps other choices make sense.
Yeah, definitely. It's sequential, and I think it's also brilliant the way you frame it as recalibration almost, because like at any given moment, anyone will make the best decision we can based on what interests us at the time, what information we have to hand, etc., etc., etc. But as you travel, we evolve, right? Like me now and 10-year-old me, like different interests.
I certainly hope so, right? At least a little bit.
There is still some similarities in the enjoyment of life and the pursuit of fun more broadly, but there's so many more nuances and layers to that interest, to the interest that I have, that I'm now aware of, that I didn't know then. So to stick blindly with something just because at one point that was your true north, that I think is a bit of a challenge at times. So thank you. And let me ask you about where the confidence to transition, because I think when looking back at your earlier career, I just wondered if there was a defining moment that gave you the confidence to pursue, like trial litigation and investigations. As you said, you hadn't heard of the US Attorney's Office initially, but then you built experience, and then you found yourself trying people and investigating things. So how did that sort of confidence to go for that come to you, really?
On the one hand, I sometimes wonder if I have the confidence at all. And every time I'm setting out to do something new, I have to go through a whole series of conversations with myself to reassure myself that I have bona fides, that I can do these things. And I sometimes I talk to people who are surprised to find out that I suffer from imposter syndrome as much as anybody. And so I don't want to overstate how confident I am. I feel like that's the most important thing to say out of the gate, that some of this is actually actively working at saying, I can do this, I can take this chance, I can see what happens. And then some of it is temperament, right? So some folks like me are a little bit more willing to take chances on things that may or may not work. I mean, I did work in Hollywood before I went to law school. It's kind of hard to imagine anything that's more of a gamble than that. And then some of it is, I find the feeling is very rooted in my physical self, that feeling of confidence. There is a kind of sense of body awareness that comes over me, say, for example, if I'm in a trial, that I can trace the through line of that even back to like playing sports as a kid. And knowing what that feels like, I feel like is very important. So I don't know that you start off with confidence from doing something as a professional. I feel like you start off from knowing what it feels like to do something well from that time that you were 10 and you made the free throw. And you just kind of build out from there. Or whatever, the time that you were in the play in high school and it went well and you're standing on stage and everybody's applauding, you're like, I nailed it. Or your piano recital, or doing really well on a test that you were well prepared for. Whatever it comes from, recognizing that feeling and then recognizing it when it comes back. You're like, I have that feeling again. That means this must be right. And that's actually challenging, but I feel like that's important. It's just sort of learning what it feels like to say, I can do this. And I am, not just I am doing this. And then once you recognize it, saying, I want to feel that way again. Let me go find another situation for it.
That's so helpful, because essentially, as I hear it, it is history creating an invisible trace that is felt in you. And I think it goes both ways. If you stood up at the play and you sucked, it made a great impression that you're no good at public speaking. Not necessarily true, it's just you had an off day, right? But if you stood up there and you enjoyed it, to your point, you harnessed that feeling somewhere within you, and then when it reappears, you reconnect to it and know in yourself that this I can do. So I wasn't expecting the answer, and I said to you, I don't know what you're going to say, but I knew there would be some gems, which is why I said we have to have this conversation. So thank you. And let me ask about the transition from government service to as a federal prosecutor to private practice? Because again, I don't know, you have to tell me, is that a well-trodden path, or do people tend to stay in one or the other? How's that shifted your perspective on justice, and I guess the fulfillment in your work? Because they're two different things, same field, but two different things, right?
It's definitely a well-trodden path. This is it's a pretty common sort of sequence for people to go from public service to the private sector, and then some folks go back into public service. But especially among lawyers, there's a real kind of back and forth between the two of them. So I had a lot of people who'd gone ahead of me that I could look at and say, okay, that's how you do that.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely an adjustment, and it's hard to know. I made this switch right before the COVID lockdowns, so it's a little hard to parse out how much was adjusting to private sector practice and how much was just adjusting to a very different set of rules that we were all operating under. And so when you work for the government, especially when you're a prosecutor, you are doing work that's very mission focused. You don't have a specific client who needs you. You're sort of working in pursuit of an idea. At least that's how it's supposed to work. And in the private sector, it's a very different experience, because all of a sudden there is, one person or one company that says, no, you are my advisor. You're not here to protect the idea of justice. You're here to protect me. And that is just, it's a different approach. It's kind of a different mindset. The skills are the same. The job fundamentally is the same, but you, as in a job like this, you make a lot of choice. You make a lot of decisions, rapid decisions, imperfect information, risk assessments, things like that. And it's one set of math to make those thinking, what is the case need to secure conviction? What does the case need to to make sure that we're operating, again, this is what you hope's happening, within the principles of justice. And it's something else to say, what does my client need me to do? And those two things are not identical at all. But I do fundamentally believe that there is merit to a system in which everybody has somebody fighting for them. And I whether it always works in practice, I think, is a completely different conversation and a difficult conversation. But at least as an idea, the notion that if we're going to have an adversarial system, then everybody should have somebody who is fighting as hard as they can for you. If I needed it, I want to know that my lawyer is committed to the idea of they are there to help me. And that is their job, is to protect me. That they have other jobs. I do very much believe in ethics. And so, you should do it within a set of rules that we've all established. But I don't think that it's a system that's set up to achieve truth. But I do think that it's a system that the intention is to achieve a kind of fairness or a kind of justice. Those two things are not exactly the same. Again, setting aside whether it achieves it, whether it's actually successful. But moving into the private sector did require sort of adjusting my perspective on that. It also has required learning a lot of new things, like actual subject matter new things. When you're a prosecutor, you get very good at answering the same fact question in different variations. But when you're in the private sector, there's also all of these other questions that you never even thought you had to learn about. So instead of just getting very deep on, was that a legal search? You also have to know things like, how's my client's business operate? What are the regulatory environment in which they're operating? How do we resolve the tension between this, and this? And does somebody have a handy leaflet I can read so I can get up to speed on the ins and outs of offshore oil drilling? Things like that.
Wow. Marvelous and enriching, and such an insight actually into that transition, which good to know that it's well trodden, but not without its challenges as well. And there are, from research, cases, federal criminal trials, appeals that you've done, and I really wanted to ask about the management of the pressure that is upon you, because I guess these are high stakes situations. How do you manage or how were you able to manage the pressure while staying true to your value?
So some of it is, I actually like the pressure.
Okay.
You know, it's like the it's like the people who like to be squeezed, wrapped in a tight blanket. So
Mhm.
I like being wrapped in the tight blanket of everybody's counting on me to come through in this minute.
Okay.
And I think that gets into sort of a temperament thing that matches up with my particular practice area.
Mhm.
Trial lawyers are like, you know, cardiothoracic surgeons, people who are looking for opportunities to have everything come down to you just so they
Mhm.
can see that they can do it. Um, but it is challenging to be able to balance that sort of I want to be under pressure. I want everything to come down to me with being an actual human being. And those two things definitely require some balance. I very much believe that lawyers should spend as much time in their lives with non-lawyers as possible. I think, or at least operating outside of that particular world as
Yeah.
possible. And I tell, you know, again, talking to law students, like, I'm not saying you have to get married and have children, but you should get a pet.
Yeah.
You should have the goldfish that you come home to. You should have something outside of this that is pulling you away, that is at least creating some kind of draw on your emotional needs, so that you do pull yourself back from the brink of being the person who's like, this is the only thing that matters. Because
Yeah.
it matters. The stakes are very, very high. But it is not the only thing that matters. There's absolutely no job anybody in the world does that it's the only thing that matters. Everybody else's life matters to them just as much as your life matters to you. And I think anything that you can do that helps you remember that, I think is sort of an important part of creating that balance and remaining a decent human being
Yeah.
while you're putting yourself in these kinds of positions.
So again, another gem, because it, yeah, I wrote about this morning, just how life generally can be extractive of us, you know, and if you keep on pouring from the cup, eventually there'll be nothing else left to pour. And I find that when you do something that you're enjoying, you know, like you went into this, you chose to go into it, it doesn't feel like work in the same way as watching the clock on a 9 to 5 for something you really don't want to be doing. So that reminder to keep an eye on the balance, and actually maybe even force the situation where you've got something else to look after or attend to, is a brilliant provocation there. So thank you again. I mean, this is great. This is great. I was thinking about cybercrime and then financial fraud as some of the areas that you've specialized in. I guess what excites you most about tackling those very, very modern challenges that we have all around us right now, even from a national security level to a, you know, an old lady or man getting harassed fraudulently for their saving. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what excites you about tackling those modern challenges, please?
I like that there's always something new going on.
Mm.
It feels like an area where what you're working against is people who are also doing this for a living.
Mhm.
And so it's got a real kind of challenge to it that never goes away. I mean, in the cyber realm, by the time you finish having a conversation with somebody about what's going on in cyber, that's already out of date and something new is happening.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same thing. Fraud moves at a, you know, equally fast pace. It evolves. Criminal activity evolves. What people need, what they're vulnerable to changes. People
Mhm.
come up with new schemes to avoid detection. So I like something that really requires staying on top of new information and new developments, but from a very human perspective. So it's not just about keeping up with what's happening in legislatures around the world, but that's part of it, but also sort of keeping up with what's happening with people around the world. And it's all so human driven while also being technically challenging, that I find that kind of balance really interesting.
Oh, I like that. And I think this builds onto some of the skills and mindsets that are needed from your observation to really thrive in those areas. What would you say some of those skills and mindsets would be?
I think that you have to be curious.
Mhm.
You have to be the person who's always willing to ask one more question or take one more minute to, I'm curious about that. Let me go see what that is. I think that's probably one of the most important things. I think another thing, though, tying into what I was just saying, is that it's really important in this kind of work to cultivate and maintain the ability to communicate with a range of people. And I
Mm.
think that one of the things that can be limiting is when folks get so deep into talking only to a particular group of people, whether that's senior executives or other people who work in security or bankers or whatever that group, or lawyers, whatever that group is. And I think cultivating and maintaining even just casual relationships with other humans who do other things, I think ends up being
Mm.
very important because it keeps you from getting too small in how you look at stuff,
Yeah,
keeps your perspective open.
I agree. It's enriching. Now, bear with me, Robyn. I don't know if you can hear it, but I can hear this background noise outside where it feels like they're blowing all the leaves on the planet onto my driveway. So
Onto
be
your
right
yard.
back. I'm gonna be right back. Just close the
Okay.
window. Right. That is taken care of, and I'm back. I'm back online. So hopefully it's quieter now. If could you hear it at all or not really?
No, I couldn't hear it at all.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it was loud and proud. I just wanted to had the window open for some fresh air, and I was like, "What are you doing?" It's like a industrial leaf blower sound thing, blowing leaves. But anyway, we digress. So thank you for that, and sharing the importance of curiosity and sort of other skills, and the fast pace with which it moves. For me, it's like by the time you figured out what has happened and what the trend is, it sounds like because this is their job, like the bad
Right.
actors, they're trying to figure out a way not to get caught and move on to the next, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have this fantasy that, they're having meetings too. They're like, everybody check in. What worked today? Okay, let's think about this. And it's an exaggeration, but it's there's those old James Bond movies where the bad guys would literally meet in a big room and like put a map up on the wall and they're like, and this is how we're gonna take over. And
Yeah.
even though that's not literally what happens, I like the idea of it because it
Mm.
just is a reminder that, everybody has their own ways of trying to, bring their best self to work. Some folks are not doing that from a greater social good perspective, but you can't forget that everybody has a reason for what they're doing.
Yeah.
And related to that is that everybody's the hero of their own story.
100%.
And nobody does anything for the purpose of doing something bad. Everybody has a reason for what they do.
Yeah.
It might just be greed. It could be something as simple as I just want to have more stuff. But everybody has a reason. And one of the things I like about financial crime and cybercrime is that you are constantly sort of being reminded of the fact that everybody that you are trying to prevent from doing these things, they all have their reasons for doing them, and they are just as determined to do them as you. It keeps you on your toes.
Yeah. So interesting, the power of the human mind, and for me it comes down to cognitive dissonance, where we can all convince ourselves of the merits and the virtues of a
Yes.
certain path of action. Yes, we know moderation is a good thing, but one more drink, one more bar of chocolate, I live this. I have the conversation in my head, which is like, oh, you shouldn't. And then it's like, yeah, but it won't hurt.
It's just one.
Yeah. And if the motivation to do the thing is greater than the motivation stopping you, or the restraint or the discipline stopping you, I can well imagine how soon the lines get very blurred. It's like, well, I need to provide for my family. This is going to be the way I'm going to do it. And actually, these people will get compensated. They'll get insurance payouts and that. So really, I'm not taking it from there. I can literally
Right.
envisage how someone will talk themselves into organizing a crime syndicate because, as far as they're concerned, they are not doing the wrong that society would say that they're doing. I can imagine.
Yeah. I mean, you can think about the stories we all tell ourselves. I mean, all of us You use the example of, chocolate, but it's true about everything. And we all like to believe that we're making the right choices and we're doing the right things. But,
Yeah.
somebody else's perspective, and they're like, oh, you're just propping up an exploitative capitalist system that has done nothing but grind the workers down. And I'm just trying to make things fair by showing how corrupt it is and making some profit. So, yeah.
A little sprinkling of capitalism while I save the planet, it's crazy.
Just a
It's
touch.
crazy.
Yeah.
I get you. And I'd love to just delve a bit into sort of further fulfillment and following other passions, because I noted that you've been involved, and you mentioned a couple of times, in teaching, for example, trial advocacy at Harvard Law School. And my question was, what inspired or inspires you to give back through teaching, and how does that enrich your own career?
I come from a whole family of teachers.
Okay.
Everybody in my family was a teacher. My grandmother taught preschool all the way up to my mom was a college professor who taught theater. And my aunts and uncles have taught every grade level in between. And so to me, it was actually in some ways an act of rebellion not to become a teacher. And so it seems very, very reasonable to me that at some point in your life, you educate. Because, there's that terrible old cliche about those who can do and those who can't teach. But my mom used to rephrase it as those who can do, but those who understand, teach. And there is so much that comes out of taking time, whether it's formally, like teaching a class, or I've trained, I don't know how many new lawyers when I was a prosecutor and at the firm on trial skills and running investigations and all the things that people need to know to do the job. And there's so much that comes out of trying to share knowledge and trying to help people acquire new information, whether it's, my uncle was a high school history teacher, whether it's just teaching them about where they came from, all the way up through teaching people how to properly use transcripts when they have bilingual recordings in a trial. It seems to me a natural and obvious thing that once you achieve a certain amount of understanding, of course you share that. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah. When you say that, it speaks to me of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where the basic needs of shelter, heat, food, they're achieved. And I think as we progress through life, if we're awake for the opportunity, we move further and further up that pyramid. The bases are covered, but that piece where there's a self-actualization, where I notice it when I coach people, it goes from, I want to get this for the vision that I had for my life, to I now want to give this because, to your point, what is the point? I'm now thinking about mortality and what legacy, like what contribution can I make to make the world better, like, and how better to do that than to help other people through teaching, formally or otherwise, So that does really resonate with me, actually. Thank you.
My mother died of cancer. She wasn't very old. She was only 53. And when we had her memorial service, the church was full. People were standing in the back and up in the balconies because there were so many people there. And she was not she wasn't an overly social person. She was a teacher. And that was a building that was full of people whose lives she had changed because she'd educated them. And I can't think of a better testament to a life well lived than that. Just generations of people coming into a room just to say that I have become a better person because I was educated by you. So it seems to me like that is actually what we should all aspire to.
I couldn't agree with you more. I feel for the loss that is never quite replaced, but on the consolation side, I feel that by doing what you've been doing, she lives on through you in any case and is in your DNA, so you can't really lose her.
I certainly hope so.
But I do resonate with that. And I think for me, stepping into my fourth decade, that's become even more highlighted, where I've realized that if I get to the average age, I've got more days behind me than I have ahead of me. And for sure, will all the ex-students who came remember exactly what your mum said? Probably not, but how she made them feel and what she made them believe was possible, and the support she gave them to meet their goals for whatever subject she taught at the time, is something that's really powerful. And for me, if we carry that vision of the feeling that we pass on, the feelings that we transmit, then it lives on through generations, because that person will then pass on something of what you've said, and therefore people never really, is what I want to believe, they never really leave us. Physically, yes, but energetically, spiritually, no. And so I'm really, yeah, chiming with that one, and I'm holding on to that in my current season that I'm in as well, navigating some of that stuff up close and personal. But thank you again. And I wanted to build on the volunteering work that you do with, have done with, let me get the names right, Downtown Women's Center.
Yes.
And Los Angeles Metropolitan Debate League. So two different ones. And I had one as sort of helping women, and one as the sort of youthful, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, want to be lawyers. Broadly speaking, what do those organizations do? See if I've got it right, or I've just completely made it up.
No, you did once again, your internal researcher doing a great job. The Downtown Women's Center is both of those are Los Angeles based. The Downtown Women's Center is an organization based in part of downtown LA called Skid Row. And it is there to provide services specifically to women who are homeless or experiencing homelessness, and in particular, the Skid Row community. So this is, if you've ever been to Los Angeles or many of the big cities in the US, it becomes very clear very quickly that despite the fact that the US is an incredibly wealthy nation, we have a disturbingly large number of people who are sleeping on the streets or in encampments or in tents or in their cars. And the Downtown Women's Center is the only one that is specifically oriented towards women experiencing this. So it's a place that not only builds housing, but also provides services. So they have a day center. You can come in, you can see a doctor, you can have a meal, you can participate in bingo. I called bingo once on a Thursday. It's actually a lot of fun. You can get a shower, you can take a lunch with you, you can do all kinds of things. It's very much bringing the services to where the people are. And I had an opportunity to become involved with them not long after I left the government, and was actually really excited about it. My job always has me working in downtown LA, and so you're very much in this community, but part of being a lawyer and fancy and working in a high-rise office means it's really easy to kind of maintain some distance between yourself and what's going on outside the window. And one of the things that I liked about being a prosecutor was it forced me not to keep that distance. Because when you're a prosecutor, you're dealing with all kinds of craziness. And you are very, very deep in the hard nitty-gritty details of urban life. And this seemed like a way of continuing that engagement, not saying I'm going to just wall myself off from the experiences of a whole section of my own community, but instead I'm gonna keep engaging with them, and I'm gonna do what I can to help, because I'm incredibly privileged and incredibly lucky. And it's like with teaching, it would be unreasonable for me not to try and do things that reflect the fact that I have all these wonderful opportunities. I have to share them. I can't keep them to myself, because I didn't get here because of just me. I'm very smart and talented. It is not only me. A whole lot of people had to contribute to make it possible for me to have the life that I have. Generations of people. So I can't not do what I can to help people coming after me. That's just not fair.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And what I wanted to ask you about it, for me, giving is living, and giving back is such a powerful component of a life well lived, But for you, how has being of service outside of work contributed to your personal sense of fulfillment?
It's such a different feeling of accomplishment, even if it's little things. When I was a prosecutor, I was part of an organization. It was called Project Lead. And basically a team of prosecutors would go teach a class to fifth graders. every Friday. It was like a, stay in school, say don't bully people, and then we would also teach them a little bit about the law. Don't answer questions, and this is how the courts work. And every year would end, we'd bring them into court, and a judge would volunteer to let us use their courtroom. We'd do a little mock trial, and they'd be like the jury and the prosecutors. It's actually adorable. And these were kids in just LA public schools. And the feeling of doing, like when those kids came in for their mock trial and the judge would let one of them use a gavel and everything, you're like, this is actually my best day in court. There is absolutely nothing as cool. I'm never going to do anything as cool as help these little kids just have one day where they all got to be in court in a federal building and participate in something like this. And I feel like that about all of these things, that it's a chance to actually feel like what you're doing is it's different, but so meaningful. And it's not just volunteering formally. It's also, your neighbor needs help. How do you, doing that helps you sort of remember the connections that we all have to each other and feel like you actually belong somewhere, and that there's actually a community that you're a part of, that it's what keeps you from feeling like you have no roots, no ties, just untethered from anything. And I think that's just really important. It's not just about giving back because so many people contributed to help me get here, but it's also because being connected to other humans in their needs and my needs is so central to the experience of being human, that this gets back to that thing about, you might like having the pressure and having everything come down to you, but you need to make sure that you stay human. Yeah. And I think it's really easy to forget how important the things are that make us feel human, taking care of other people, helping those in need, or even just things like watching a funny movie, but together with other people. This is ultimately the work that we're here to do, is to be a part of humanity, and everything else that we do should ultimately be in service of that.
That's so eloquently put. And I can't help, as you're saying that, to reflect on how times have changed. If we look back over the decades that, you and I have both been alive, one, I think there was an under-reporting of and misunderstanding of mental health diagnoses, so we didn't know. But another is, as connectivity has allegedly increased through, my phone is turned and off over here, but through the phone, which can now do social media, it can do your emails, it does your WhatsApp, it does everything. I feel what you talk about there has moved further and further away from accessibility every day. We've got more access, but less access to what it is to be human, because you can say, I'm checking in on my friend because you see their stories, and maybe cognitive dissonance says, I know what's going on with them. But when we didn't have all of this, you'd call them or you go and see them and you sit with them and making the space for them. You share and you connect about what is really happening, not what they want you to see, which is the alive. I'm on this beach, I'm drinking this cocktail, look at this, look at that. It's not that. They are going through some things. I think we all at different points go through some things. So I really, really love what you say about what it is to be human. And yeah, I think something for reflection on further for myself and others, to stay connected, to really stay connected, intentionally so. That's really brilliant. But Robyn, we are flying at a pace. I don't know if you realize we've done a good stint. Just
good heavens.
See, so for the plane not to come crashing down, I want to put the landing gear out and say, I've got two more questions. Okay. Do you still have time? Is that okay?
I definitely still have time. Let's do this.
Yeah. They say time flies when you're having fun. I know I put the words in your mouth, but hopefully you're enjoying it. Hopefully you're enjoying it. So I think my penultimate question would be, if you could share something that would leave listeners with one guiding principle for following their passions, interests, you name it, and building a fulfilling career, what would that be?
I mean, I think it comes down to the same idea of knowing what you need and knowing what you want. And there is no one in the world who is as invested in your thriving as you.
True.
No matter what. Other people love you, I hope. I mean, it's what I want for my son. I want him to grow up and have a life where people care about him and he cares about other people. But at the end of the day, and I mean thriving. So this is that step beyond surviving. No one is ever going to have as much invested in it as you, and no one's going to have as much of a sense of how to do it as you. And so I think the first step for everybody is thinking about, what do you need and what do you want, and then building out from there. And so the generic forms of advice, I think, often let people down. Pursue your passion. What does that even mean? Or you should do something really practical and become an accountant. Like, that doesn't really mean anything either. If I truly hate doing that, I have accomplished nothing. But if I have decided that, no, I think it does make sense. I actually kind of like, I mean, personally, I actually wish I had gone into accounting sometimes. But if you're like, yeah, I have a fantasy of being a forensic accountant. I've always thought it'd be a really cool job.
It's never too late. Never too late.
That's what people keep telling me. I'll keep that in mind. But, if you're like, what I need financial stability. I have siblings and parents that are going to need me to be able to help them. I want to be able to provide for my children a nice, comfortable life in which they can focus on, in which they feel secure and can focus on their education, and I can afford to make sure they get a good education, and I want to travel. Right? You're like, that's what I want for my life. So how do I get the, well, if I'm an accountant, I can, and become a CPA, I can make enough money to achieve that. That's a good start, but you don't stop the inquiry there, because you think about, like, what else do you need? Well, I also need to sing opera in my free time, or I also need to see and appreciate works of abstract art, or I need to play sports, because if I'm not on sports teams, then I feel like I'm losing connection to other people. So it's asking yourself about these things and then being able to put the pieces together. And some of it is realizing not all of it will come from your career. So you want your career to provide as much as possible because you spend an awful lot of time doing it. But, and so you don't want to hate every minute of your life, and you will if you're doing something that's truly making you miserable. And there's just no escaping that. So you definitely need to be aware of it. But then you also need to be thinking about, what are the things I can get professionally, and then what are the things maybe I can get in another way, and can I then help these two things fit each other? And again, I'm not just talking about getting married and having kids. I'm also talking about, which people, when they talk about this stuff, they tend to really get it very narrow. And, I think about the people that I've known in life who have the most boring day jobs imaginable, but they're very happy because it leaves them plenty of free time to climb mountains in the weekends. And if that's what you need as a person, then that is how you put together, that's the career path you should pursue. The thing that you're done at the end of the day, and you make enough money that you can afford to spend the weekends, cave diving, or whatever it is that you, or coaching youth soccer, or whatever. Or you want to be a cardiothoracic surgeon, because what you're really looking for is something that gets you really excited and it's hard to do, and only 6 other people can do it.
Yeah. Robyn, when you are ready, I think there's a career for you as a coach,
When I was younger, I did have, one of my other fantasies was to become like one of these self-help gurus. And I was going to call it the Bacon Leadership training, or the Bacon Leadership Training Academy. So it'd be the BLT.
BLT.
Yeah.
You've done that.
Oh, I had all kinds of ideas. I thought the marketing plan really just kind of sets itself out.
It's done. It could be a wrap. It could be a wrap. But no, I think there's something in the way that you have anchored the conversation in lived experiences, but also I think from your background in law, being able to interrogate and ask questions, I think could be really powerful. So not trying to get you to change off your lane now, but I don't believe in the binary this or that type of classification that we have. I think what you just shared really liberates when you realize that work is not a replacement for your spiritual growth and development. It is not the only place where you can go and contribute to society. It forms a part of it, like you shared, and it should be sufficiently enjoyable, but opening your view and not being so narrow, as you said, to what else can I do? What else makes me feel alive? And why not? You know, because again, with the stories we tell ourselves, sometimes we're like, oh yeah, well I can't because that'll be too expensive, or oh, I don't have the time, and then woe is me, and I stay the victim of my circumstance rather than actually thriving. Which I love how you use the difference between survival and thriving, because if there's one shot to live, like, who wants to like scrape around life on their knees? Like, why not stand tall and proud and glow because you're doing the things that fuel your passions, plural, not the passion that society tells you must be your calling, you know?
Yeah. And I think that remembering that the other things that matter to you count too is something we all lose track of. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do this wrong all the time. If you ask me, I can give a good answer. But if you look at any given day, it's like with the connection thing. I forget to connect to people too. I mean, I can't remember the last time I actually talked to my sister. So, like, you know, our lives we're all a work in progress, and we all have the challenges that we're sort of spending our lives trying to get better at. But I think embracing that is the key to just actually making your life about what you want it to be, is saying, what is the work I'm here to do, big picture, and how do I make sure that I'm getting it done?
Yeah, 100%. And for me, we are human, and once we accept that and we understand it is an evolutionary progress to develop, so it's progression, not perfection, then I think we let go of so much angst. Because I mean, I screw up. We all screw up, and I'm not afraid to say that I did, because if I didn't, it probably meant that I wasn't trying to push myself in order to something that I need to learn from, you know. So thank you for that. And God, I don't even want to go. I want to stay on and talk to you for the rest of it. I must. And I'm just thinking the last question to ask is really about 2026 and what you may hope for to come next for you, or are excited about, because we are at that point of the year where so much has happened. I mean, you're here in the UK, albeit slightly north of where I am. Like, when you look to 2026, I guess, what are some of your hopes, dreams, and aspirations for where life will take you in any direction you want to take that, really?
I have been lucky enough to be able to spend 2025 on a sabbatical. So I have not been working for the first time in my life for this past year. I mean, I've never taken time off. I finished law school. I drove to Vegas with some friends, and then I started work the next week. Yeah, I took the bar and then drove to Vegas. I had a wonderful time in Vegas that weekend. That was like my 2-day transition from one job to the next. And so I've never actually had an opportunity to see what I'm capable of when I'm not also trying to do a very demanding job. And I am really excited about some of the things I've learned about myself, like the fact that I am actually capable of learning new skills, meeting new people, developing new kinds of relationships. And so my personal goal for 2026 is to actually build on that, to really actually embrace these sort of capabilities that I didn't know I had, and see what I can do with it. And actually see what happens if I then bring it back into the context of working me. And then, you know, beyond that, I think it's time to get a dog. Our dog passed away about 3 years ago, and I think it's time for another one. That's got to be top of my list for 2020. It's certainly top of my son's list. I think it's top of mine too. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds brilliant. And I think there's something I was thinking about in terms of what we can stop doing, what we can start doing, what we can continue doing. And it sounds to me that there's lots to continue with, from being involved in the music and connecting, building new perspectives, and start looking for a dog is another one.
Oh yeah.
I don't know what you'd stop. Is there anything that you'd stop doing for New Year?
That's a good question. I mean, there's the things that I'm always trying to stop doing. Like, I'm always trying to stop doubting myself before I actually try to do things.
Mm.
I think it would probably be good for me to stop spending so much time doom scrolling on my phone. So actually, I think that is a very worthwhile goal, to
Mm.
see if I can create a little bit of emotional distance between myself and this little device in my pocket that's just ready to feed
Mm.
me all kinds of detailed information about things going on that I don't control, that
Mhm.
I just obsessively look at. I don't use social media, but I do read the news compulsively. And
Yeah.
so actually, it'd be great if I could stop doing that and go
Yeah.
back to the kind of media diet that my mom had. She read the paper every morning.
Done.
Yeah, and listen to the news on the radio during her commute.
Done.
Done. So let's,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm going to see if I can do that. Thank you. I hadn't yet actually had a chance to think through what my goals were for 2026, but I think that's a good one.
Well, look, Coach Kofi at your service, you know. And
I appreciate it, Coach Kofi.
Anytime. And if I could build on that, I think what has helped me with that same challenge of the addictiveness of the phone is trying to replace it with something that is more wholesome. So whether it be reading a book or spending some time journaling, but whatever works for you, you know, like you said, we're all experts in our lives, and it's sometimes to have a light shone on, yeah, maybe that's not the most productive thing you could be doing, or maybe that's not the most beneficial. Because I also like this idea that not everything must be about productivity.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes being present to absorb the sights, the sounds, the smells, and just be there 100% with your son and your partner, whatever it may be, is powerful. But yeah, just replacing that doom scrolling with something more wholesome. I look forward to hearing about that. I really do.
Yeah, let's check in in about 6 months. We'll see how that's coming along.
You don't have to do this. It's not gonna be 6 months. I'll be checking next week to say.
Okay, let's check in a week and a half. We'll see how that's coming along. But I agree, not everything should be productive, and letting go of the thought that everything needs to be productive, I think, is also pretty important. It's mildly un-American, but I think it wouldn't be a bad idea. We are a 24/7 hustle kind of people, but you know, sometimes it's good to do things just to do them and not because it's going to accomplish anything. It's why I play music. I will never be that good, but that's kind of not the point.
No, it isn't the point. And I think this has been a whirlwind, just rapid. Like I said to when we started out, we'll have about this time. So I'm glad you moved something so we could have more time. It's flown by because it's been so fun. And I also want to shout out Lee Higgins for putting us in touch and introducing us, because he's a gem of a man, but also knows other gems. And so I'm really proud to have got to know you and share your story. And it will no doubt inspire many people. So thank you once again, Robyn, for your time and wisdom today, to be honest.
Thank you too, Kofi, and thank you, Lee, for introducing us.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, enjoy the rest of the weekend and the plans as they unfold, and being present and enjoying the green that is around you in Bonnie, Scotland.
Well, and enjoy your own scheduling as an Uber driver this weekend, if it's your weekend to be an Uber driver.
No, this weekend the cat's away, so the meese will play. So I'm a free range chicken. We've got some lovely things, but not too much. I'm learning to ease off the throttle and not go hell for leather, because to our point, having time to just be present and do nothing productive is also a good thing. So I'm going to lean into that a bit more and look at my Christmas tree with the lights on and maybe get a mince pie and watch a fire on the TV.
That sounds lovely. I hope you enjoy it.
I will. All right. Well, I'll check in with you next week, a week and a half, to see how it's going. All right.
Okay.
All right, Robyn. Take care. Thanks a lot.
Bye.